doing, and then I'll post this up onto the classroom afterwards, and then you can kind of go back over what we're doing. So today we're going to do some compound frames. And so at the moment, the kind of frames that you've been doing are kind of rectangles, or maybe some circles, or polygon kind of shapes, just like these, okay? And just like in Illustrator, where you've seen that these are all made up of anchors, you can edit those. So you can edit those using the pen tool. So when you grab the object, you have it selected. You can then grab the pen tool, and then you can edit these. So when you bring the pen over any of the vector objects that you've got inside of InDesign, you can see that the icon next to the pen changes. So if you're not on an object, it will give you the star symbol, which means that you're going to start a new path. If you go onto an already existing path, it will give you the plus symbol. If you're on an empty space where there is no anchor, or if you go over a corner, such as here, where there is an anchor, it will give you the minus symbol, where you can take it away or you can add it into it. So once you've added in an anchor, you can use the direct select tool, so the white arrow, and select those individual anchors and points. Now, when you want to select and modify it, InDesign has some really helpful things to do for you here. So one of them is it will bring up the line symbol here. So you've selected an entire edge, or you can select an individual anchor. Now, it's kind of hard to see it, so I'll just zoom in a little bit closer. But the anchor will change from being white. Okay, so if I select this, it will be white where it's unselected to being filled blue, so it is selected. And then you can pick it up and move it around. So I'll just zoom out so you can see how you can change the shapes really nicely on that. So again, A will give you the direct select tool, allowing you to select the anchors. When it's highlighted blue, that means that you've got that one anchor selected, so you can modify it and move it around. So it means that you can pop in, hello Anna, it means that you can pop in and change the shape of these frames, okay? And just like in, I'm just going to try and move that chat out of the way. Just like in Illustrator, you can use the properties panel to kind of move and flip objects around. So if you wanted to flip this around and do some pattern work on it, you're looking at this section over here. So this is where the kind of flipping is organized. So if I choose this corner, it's going to be flipped in relation to that corner over there and that edge, okay? Likewise, if I wanted to flip it on this edge, you go over here and then flip it over here. Now, in Illustrator, if you hold down the Alt key, it will make a copy from this, and the same is true inside of InDesign. So before you want to flip your object, if you hold down the Alt key, so you select your frame, and then go over here to the flip horizontal or flip vertical, and then hold down the Alt or Option key on a Mac, and that will make you a copy. Now, the idea behind this is that you can use these frames in very different ways. So you can add frames together and subtract them and change their shape. So with having two frames, you can select the two of them, and then in the properties tool panel, you should have a pathfinder appearing. Sometimes InDesign doesn't always recognize when you have two frames, especially if you've modified one shape. It thinks that one is a frame and one is a drawing object. So if that happens, you just go up to Window and then looking for Object and Layout, and then bring out the Pathfinder, and that will bring out this tool panel here, allowing you to add these frames together. Okay, so you can add these together. So you can see that the X symbol marking that these are two individual frames will get combined, and then you can paste in one single image into these. You can also change the content type for this. So if you go up to Object and down to Content, you can change it from a graphic to a text. So you could then type into this. So you can type into it. You could go fill with placeholder text, and then that will fill it. So you can get some really unusual shaped frames for these. Likewise, if you just wanted to put an image inside of this, have it selected, and then File, Place. And then that will bring up your import dialog. I'm just going to move that off screen for a second. And then you can pick out an image and import it into it. And it means that you can now work with very unusual shaped frames. So not everything has to stay squares or rectangles, but you can do lots of interesting things to these. And if I just scroll down again, just going back over the anchors for these. So to select them, use the direct select tool. That will allow you to select an edge. If you go in and select on one of the individual anchors, you'll notice that this one is white, so it's not selected. This one is blue, it is selected, and you can manipulate and move that around. And then when you have 2 or 3 or 4 different paths overlapped on top of each other, so I'll just reduce this down. Again, to copy, hold down Alt and drag your object so you can add these together. Select all 3 or however many and use the pathfinder to add them together. Now, you could also use the pathfinder to subtract as well. So if you were thinking about making this area, say, for example, as a text box, but you wanted to cut out some space or to have like a circular path around it, the same applies as how you would do this in Illustrator. So just arrange and bring the one that you want to cut out into the front, and then select the 2 and use the difference command, and that will cut out this from the other. Now, if you want to do it multiple times and you want to cut out of several shapes, just take a copy of this. So Control-C or Command-C on a Mac, edit, copy, and then keep that on the clipboard, and then difference this one away. Then go up to Edit, Paste in Place. So it copies, takes the copy and pastes it into the same space that it came from. Again, just make sure that that is into the front. So bring to front and then difference these away. So you can have very interesting shapes happening with these. And then, yeah, you can apply all the same kind of effects that you would to any of these frames. So you can edit the stroke value. You can change the corner value, so you can increase the stroke size on it and the stroke weight. You can change the cornering on these. So if you don't want them to have right angle corners and you want to have them with bevels or insets, without having to actually draw every single shape on it, you can use the appearance tool panel with the corners for this. Okay, and you can change the distance that these apply for this, and this can lead you to make some really unusual and interesting shapes just by using the up and down arrow. And how you do that is you just put your mouse icon, your cursor, into the corner length dialog box, and then use your arrow keys to increase it up or down. And you might want to have just a brief look through the different types of corners that you can have. So bevels, insets, and so on. And some of these give really, really unusual results when you start moving them up or down. And these might be really interesting for you, not necessarily to use as graphic frames or anything like that, but as interesting ways of making graphic patterns. And one of the kind of the tasks and asks from your brief is looking at patterns and how you might make those. So what you're going to do, or one of your first tasks, is you're going to make an A6 postcard. Okay, it's going to have a 5mm bleed, and you're going to make a couple of graphic frames onto it, and then using the pathfinder, add and subtract these together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this circle out from these 3 frames. So again, select this frame. And before I start, I'm going to copy it so that I know I can have another copy for each of these. Make sure it's on the top. So as soon as it doesn't say bring to front or bring forward, it means that this item is stacked at the very top of this particular layer and stack of objects. Select the 2 objects that you're going to difference, and then use the difference from this. And then I need another copy for these 2. So edit, paste in place, and then select this frame and this one, and then difference that. Again, I need another copy for down here. So edit, paste in place, and then select these, and then difference that. So now you can see, again, each of the content signifiers here is showing that these are individual frames. So to unify these together to become one frame, select all of them and go over to the pathfinder, and this will unify them with one single cross mark to show that this can hold one object. And if I go to file place, and now I can place in one image inside of this entire frame. And this is how you can then kind of build up a kind of a very complex grid of images behind a graphic. All of the settings for the frames are still active. So if you don't want any stroke on this, go over to the stroke section of the properties panel or window stroke. And this will bring out the persistent menu, and then you can change these. So you can change these down to have no stroke, in which case if I just turn on the print preview, you can see this is the kind of setup that you would get from that. You can still access the content from the image. Okay, so you select using the direct select tool. It will show you again the frame around this, showing you how large or small that image is. So if you need to increase it in size, hold down the shift key. Unlike Illustrator and Photoshop, InDesign does not have that default set to keep the proportions on it. So you need to hold down the shift key to change that. And then you can just resize it and reframe it so that you're getting the kind of the outlook that you're looking for on these. Okay. You can also do this with text, and with text, it can be very, very successful. So you can do these using a grid of images as well, and with text. And I'm going to show you how to do kind of more complicated ones in a few minutes. We'll do these in Illustrator. You're always going to be using InDesign for making your layouts. Illustrator will be doing for your will be used for your vector drawings and so on. So you like, even though InDesign can make a lot of these vector drawings, it's much easier and faster for you to make these inside of Illustrator, and then you can copy and paste them across. And then working with text, so making these with text, what you need is a block of text to work with this. So if I just grab the type tool, and I'm just going to click and drag, and then I'm going to type in some text. So I'll type in text, and then I'm going to resize this. You can resize this before if you already know roughly the kind of the size of text that you're dealing with, and you can swap over the font family. I had asked you guys to have a look at some fonts online to see if you can find ones that would identify with your personality and how you would describe yourself. So if you're having some problems maybe installing those or getting those onto your computer, I can also help you out with that. Whenever you see this symbol, this little red box with the red cross in it, it means you have overset text. The text is too large for the box to fill. So there are two ways you can fix that. You can right click and go into fitting and fit frame to content. So Control Alt C or Command Alt C, or you can drag out one of the corner toggles for these. Control Alt C will shrink the text box or enlarge the text box to fit whatever content is inside it. So what you need to do with your text is you set it up the size and shape the way you want, the particular style, font family, and then you're going to convert it from being text into an outline. So it's a drawing of the shape rather than any text anymore. So to convert it to an outline, you go up to type and then down to create outlines. And you'll notice that the text box changes form. So it's showing you that it's a graphic text box now, okay, with this little symbol here. And this one here is showing you that it's a group of objects, okay? So I'm going to take this one and do the same thing. So type create outlines, or Control Shift O or Command Shift O on a Mac. And that will turn these into now drawings of the text. Now, what you have here is a group. So I'm just going to ungroup it. So Control Shift G or right click ungroup. And you can do the same with each of these. So Control Shift G or Command Shift G. And then I will use the pathfinder to unite all of these paths. Now, because they have 3 different colors, once this gets unified, all of these will have one color to signify that they can have one fill. So at the moment, these are three separate arrangements. So when I do this, it's going to bring it together into one frame. And I can, again, go File, Place, pick out an image, and place it in. And again, you can access the content of this using the white arrow, and that will give you the image inside it. So you can see the frame for the image. Hold Shift to resize it. If you hover around the corners, you'll get the rotate symbol. So sometimes it can be a little bit finicky. I'm just going to move over a little bit and just resize that down. And you can always access the rotate command with OR. It's going to look for a center point or a rotation point. So you can pick anywhere and then click and drag, and that will rotate it as well. Okay. Go back out of transform. So you can hit the V or the A key, and then you can resize your image and change its shape and so on. Okay. So again, when you're doing this, you're going to type in your text, and then you're going to convert the text to outlines. So create outlines, and then File, Place in an image. So you could place in several different images into these if you wanted. So you could do that just by placing in one image at a time, and then type and create outlines, and then placing in the image. So File, Place, and then you can place in different images into these. Again, to change where that image is located, sometimes because of the way the text frame is, you're going to get a humongous image inside of this. So just bear in mind that if you're not seeing the edge of your object or your text frame or the image frame, it's because it might be too large for your screen. Okay, so just bear in mind you might need to zoom out quite far to do that. And you can always use the Properties tool panel. So once you've got the image selected or the content from a frame selected, you can change it up here in the Properties tool panel. Just bear in mind that you want to keep these linked so that you don't stretch or skew the image by accident. Okay. And then I've got 2 examples from a past student, so you can see what you can kind of do with these. So one is with a compound frame, and that is where it's got a number of different frames that have just been put together as a grid and then modified these shapes. So it kind of gives it a kind of a more dynamic look to it. Okay. Your photograph or your image that you're putting into this can be anything. It can be fairly abstract. And then the other one is with some text. And this one here. So you can see the image, some fried eggs or raw eggs, soon to be fried, and then placed inside these. So you can do the same thing with the Pathfinder, not just unifying the individual characters together into one frame that you can paste into, but you can unify all of the characters together and overlap these. Okay. So your first task that I'm going to ask you to do is to make some compound frames and compound paths, and then place an image into it. And I'll stop recording that at this point, and then we can discuss any problems on Zoom.